Good morning. It's again time for the IBASA and EPI webinar, and I want to welcome everyone attending today. People are slowly signing up. In fact, we've had quite an extraordinary sign up for this webinar, quite a number of people, over 150 as it stands now. So we're probably going to see the room filling up quite quickly. Looks like there's some familiar names again of people, Daryl, Luther, that my eyes just fall on here, but also welcome to people that are signing in for the new time, for the first time. Hi, Pendile, nice to see you here. Rick, Teko, I think Terence is perhaps the one that's been attending our webinars the most vigorously. And of course, this is part of IBASA's attempt at providing you as a practitioner, supporting entrepreneurs with opportunity to learn. It's part of the CPD. It can also count to IBASA CPD points that you need to accumulate as you are empowering yourself to be better at your profession. So welcome everyone, Dudu, Abel, Addison, and I see we're fast getting more and more people signing in. So this time around, we have decided to shift proceedings around a bit, mainly through the suggestion of people that have been attending our webinars, that we jump into discussing our topic first, and then after 12 o'clock, we will be moving on to IBASA matters, some exciting news about the AGM and so on. And for that, we've got Teddy Mapuvire from the IBASA office and Lynn Maggot, IBASA board member, in the room to talk about. But our topic today is something, in fact, I've been looking forward to this webinar a long time because it's a really important topic for us as practitioners. We're supporting entrepreneurs and business owners all the time, and sometimes we make mistakes. And this is the topic of our webinar today: why mentorship projects fail and how to improve impact on small business mentees. So start off by sharing stories about projects where we were involved in mentorship, where the mentor perhaps afterwards can identify something that contributed towards things going wrong and that we can fix, and what we can learn from that. And we've got three mentors, practicing mentors and mentorship program managers in the room, in the form of Emma Sexton from Business Activator. And we also have Nosizwe Jele from Enterprise Room and Ian McCloy from African Entrepreneurship Academy, all really active in the field. And of course, we've got all of you attending here today also as participants in this discussion. So, by the way, if you can start off by introducing yourself. I see Daryl, Terence, Teddy have already started to do so. If you click on the chat button, it will open a window for you to participate in the discussion through text chat. So we can't all hear our voices today, but we can make our voice heard through participation in the text chat. So I would ask that everyone in the room here, if you can just indicate where you're from and what your focus is in business advising. What is your specialty? We've heard that some attendees in the past have found that after seeing someone, meeting someone on the webinar, they could actually refer business to them or share in projects where they were lacking the expertise themselves. So it's also a platform for us to do that. Okay, so let's move on to the topic then. I see there's some Laura. Hi Laura, nice to see you here as well. Please feel free to open the chat and introduce yourselves there. By the way, we also have a prize which we normally don't have on our webinars. We've got 6 attendees here today that can win access to 2 months free access to a mentor peer circle. We'll tell you a bit more about that later in the webinar. So hang on for that news and for your opportunity to benefit in that way too. Okay, so let me introduce to you, if I can ask Nosizwe, Ian and Emma to, and of course we've got Karel Venter in the back doing the production, and my name is Christoph Oosthuis and my job is to host the webinar here today. So that's all the people, but let's see them. So maybe Emma, Nosizwe, and Ian, if you may switch on your cameras, and then I'll introduce you quickly. And perhaps Karel, if we can have gallery view, then people on the webinar can see everyone. We're not limited to the one speaking. Nosizwe Jele, she's been involved in advisory services for quite a while, for over 10 years now, and is lately serving as a director at Enterprise Room. So her focus is mainly on implementing of enterprise development strategies for organizations and the assessment of success too. So that's quite an important part of what we set out to achieve. So welcome, Nosizwe. We'll introduce you just now. I see that there's something wrong with your camera, so I'm not sure. Maybe between you and Carl, you can see if you can sort that out for us, because your camera is not coming on. But let's move on. We will speak to you just now. There we are. Yeah, great stuff. Emma Saxton. In fact, I've worked on programs myself with Emma in Philippi with the Business Activator, which was previously called Business Place Philippi, and she's been there quite a while, over 5 years now, I think, in implementing enterprise entrepreneurship development projects. Emma's astute in the disciplines of mentoring and coaching, and the finer distinctions between that. I can say that because I've engaged with her around these topics, and I'm really looking forward. Emma has also been involved in Comensa, another professional association, and lately in Echo Ventures with designing of programs. So welcome, Emma. We'll speak just now. And then lastly on our panel, we've got Ian McCloy. He's the founder of the African Entrepreneurship Academy, as I said earlier, and has over 20 years experience in this field. So a lot of experience to draw on. He currently works as a coach and a trainer, so there in the, at the coalface, as they say, where the tire hits the tar. And of course, that's where we can learn from today, and we'll be focusing more on the practical today. Of course, what we can learn is within a context, but welcome, Ian. Looking forward to your input there too. Okay, so that's the quick introductions. Let's start off for us to get a sense on who the people are in the room. If I can ask, we're just going to launch a poll quickly, so you'll see that will come up onto your screen to say whether you are a member of IBASA or not, or what your situation is. Perhaps you've been a member and your membership expired. So just select the choice there in terms of yourself, what applies to you. It looks like most people in the room are members, but if you can vote there, we'll close the vote just now. Of course, the benefit of joining IBASA is something that we'll be talking about a bit later on, when Teddy and Lynn will be chatting to us about the IBASA affairs. But just to get an idea of, there's quite a few people that aren't members, never been a member, over 10%, not, but considering. It's moving up to 11% now. And there's quite a bit, 20% of people whose membership expired. So maybe there's some work to be done to make sure that people that have been members renew their membership, so that we can build our industry of professionals. And then about 60% of people in the room are already members. So thank you very much for voting there. Can I say, let's jump into this topic now. Emma, if I can ask that you unmute yourself and tell us your story from a case or two that you have noticed in your working with entrepreneurs in the mentorship space, mistakes that have been made, and what you've learned from that. So we can keep it informal, if you can tell us the story. If there's a question or two that I may jump into, I'll do so. But otherwise, please feel free to share with us what you've experienced.
Sure. So just to get into context, for the last few years, I've been working in Philippi at Business Activator, and have been involved in designing and implementing various entrepreneur development programs. And as part of that, I've been coaching and mentoring small business owners. And that ranges from startups through to people who've been running their businesses for a few years. And typically they come to Business Activator because they're looking for some input in terms of, running the business of running a business rather than the expertise that they have within their particular type of business. So there's a couple of lessons that I've learned along the way, and a few mistakes I've made, and made them more than once with different people, and then, you know, been kind of reminded of how important these lessons are. So I want to share with you some of those, and I'll use a couple of examples. I'll start with one person, just to describe the nature of the business. I was working with a woman who had started up a takeaway business where she was making food and people would come and buy it from her premises. And she would also deliver to some people in the surrounding area. And for the sake of this conversation and anonymity, I'll just call her Lisa. She was a very vibey, dynamic, go-getter woman who saw an opportunity for doing baked goods and for providing cooked meals in the newly established container area in Philippi. And you know, she definitely had some skills for working out the best prices for her products and how to get her customers. She was great at attracting customers to her business. And the conversations that we had were very much about how to strengthen her financial management skills and to grow her profit margin so that she could really focus on the, you know, growing her business in the direction she wanted to go, which was more in the baked goods area. And so in our discussions, some of the things that came up were she clearly had an ability to work out what price she should sell something at where she would make a profit for a single item. And she clearly knew how to make the item and produce it on time and attract the customer. And the day-to-day financial recording was great. But only on that day, and then what happened to that money afterwards or how to take it forward was something of a challenge. So just in the discussion with her, one of the first mistakes I made was I assumed that she had more financial forward planning than she did. So based on her quick decisions that she made in the moment, the mental sum she made in her head, I assumed based on that she was also thinking quite a bit ahead in terms of how to manage that money, her business, her financial analysis skills. I assume there was more established skills that she had than she was actually using. So also in our conversations and the training that she had experienced while being on a business builder program at Business Activator, there had been modules on financial management and on costing and pricing and on budgeting. And so the conversations that I had with her were linking to that information. And what I found was I was assuming she was holding on to all that information and taking it forward quickly. So a few key points which created a mismatch between us in our conversation and actually kind of created a situation where she ended up a little bit in deer in the headlights and almost trying to cover up the fact that she wasn't necessarily keeping track of her finances, was that I assumed that she had skills. I started too far ahead with her. I was focusing on the task of the financial management rather than what was going on for her emotionally around financial management and in her life. And I was expecting quick changes to some of her habits in terms of financial record keeping. And when I wasn't seeing changes happening, I was having quick conversations with her about it rather than actually sitting down and really asking questions and unpacking what was really happening for her, and thus building more trust between us for her to really start opening up more about what was happening. And when I realized that this was the situation, I started to ask more questions. So part of the solution was that I took a few steps back. I took more time to sit with her financial books and go through each day's takings, and really asked her questions to ensure I really understood where her gaps in understanding were. And I really understood what help she was really asking for at the time. So by going through her records and really trying to help her unpack where the sticking points were for her, what we discovered was that she definitely had a fear about really writing down all the money she was making. She had a fear about SARS, that they would find out, or somehow that the program would be reporting that. There was fear around maybe losing her position in the program if she wasn't making enough money quick enough, and fear that she wasn't pleasing me. It was actually a very big thing. So what happened was we really talked that through, and I shared some examples myself of my own financial management lessons that I'd learned in personal budgeting and living above my means, and looking at how to put money aside, various stages in when I was earning money, and by sharing my own experiences, my own mistakes, really seemed to help her open up and talk about what she was struggling with. And so it then opened up a whole conversation about other pressures that were coming through from her family. And it was amazing, because then we actually started to have a conversation about how she was going to manage that. So she had a situation with some family members where they were relying on her financially. And actually, some of the solutions that we worked towards there was how she was supporting them to then find employment and to find ways of earning money. And she came up with the most amazing solutions in terms of assisting them to find their own way financially and to hold more boundaries. So our conversation moved away from the financial management conversation to about holding boundaries, to about supporting family members in finding other work, to about her own fears about declaring how much she was earning to me, to building trust with me, and also then on the hard skills. So one of the things that really helped a lot on the hard skills was for us to revisit the content that she had learned in the training around these aspects. Because although she could talk to them, she wasn't necessarily doing them. And I knew that in terms of the learning kind of feedback loop, the reinforcement is particularly important. So in every session that we had, we would start with, where are we financially? What have you noticed from last week? And celebrating the small successes she was having and going, wow, what I realized is this particular product is actually my highest profit maker. I didn't realize that. I didn't necessarily like the product, but it's making me the most money. So now I found a way of doing a special around that. And, it's actually bringing me in daily income, which I need in order to buy the ingredients to make, to maximize my profit every day. So the cash flow, yes.
I see in the chat that people are picking up very nicely some of the issues that you're raising. Sort of, for instance, the thing about assumptions. So I see that Dudu made some comments about making assumptions and how those assumptions lead us down a pathway that may not lead to the results. And Rick also commented about your candidness about the emotion, sort of focusing on the task rather than tuning into the emotion. Those are two very big things that I already get from you. Were there other, sort of big observations that you made from this example that you're sharing?
I think for me, the jumping very far ahead was a key one for me in terms of not asking enough questions up front. So the questioning process for me, and reinforcing that, and almost sitting in a space of not listening in order to offer my solution, but listening to really understand this business owner, and listening from the perspective of hearing a very unique and amazing story about what kind of specialist this person is, where their strengths were, where their development areas were. And the more I sat with that and questioned, and we talked through our own stories together, the more we started to gain traction in finding quick wins.
Yeah. So listen more and think less.
Absolutely. Yeah. And a small win to me was a massive win to her, you know, so small things that I thought, oh, well, we've only done this. She was like, wow, that was amazing. You know, so my assumptions around progress were very much informed by my thinking rather than hers.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's very powerful observations. And as I judge from the what's happening in the chat, there's also some resonance. So by the way, anyone attending may put their comments on their experiences too. So thanks, Rick and Dudu and so on that have already been doing that. But please share. So if you've had similar situations where you listened less and assumed more, you know, sort of how did you get out of that? And you can share in the chat, you know, sort of maybe tips for others. So I'm not sure if there's a tip that you may have, Emma, before we move on to Nosizwe, in terms of these observations. Listen more, think less, you know, understand the emotional, not only the tasks, assumptions that we make.
Yeah, I think
having they can improve their impact with their clients.
I think having a set of questions to ask that relate maybe to various topics, rather than having the solution or the advice up front, having the questions first, because then knowing where to land your experience and where to land your advice is much more useful, offering a small amount in the right place rather than a large amount of information and advice in the wrong place. It's just going to land on deaf ears. So, you know, rather going for offering less and asking more to find the exact point to offer, to find a more appropriate point to offer useful information, which immediately gets transformed into knowledge and data and action for a mentee. And asking others, I think, is the other point really, because by asking the other mentors who are helping on the program and by asking the trainers and just talking to you know, the group really assisted each other to kind of understand what was really happening and we had similar issues, you know, so what was really happening and the challenges and the solutions we could offer each other.
Great, thank you very much. That gives us, I was just remind Carol, I think you on Spotlight view and not on speaker view. So webinar attendees will keep seeing Emma until you change that for us. But we are going to move over to Nosizwe now. So Nosizwe, perhaps if you can switch on your camera so long while Carol is sorting out the view issue for us, because we would like to see Nosizwe rather than Emma as we go forward.
Okay.
Just you're unmuted, but we also need your video, Nosizwe.
I think.
And Carol, please switch over.
Yes.
Carol, if you can please switch over to presenter view, that we can see Nosizwe. Nosizwe, you have to switch on your camera, right?
It is on. It's telling me that my host has stopped it. So I think Kara just needs to sort it out.
Okay, I'm asking that you.
Now it's on. Okay, now it's.
Oh, there you are. Great. So we'll just get Carol to switch on, because I think on the webinar now we don't see you yet. There we are. Thanks. So the technology sometimes work great, but with a few buttons that we press, we sort it out quickly. So Nosizwe, from your experience with Enterprise Room and the programs that you run, and you also have a whole host of mentors that you work with. So reflecting on that, you know, sort of mistakes that are being made in leadership and what we can do to increase our impact. How would you tackle that one?
Yes, I just wanted to thank Emma for that just very insightful approach that she's taken with this business owner, because we're also running a program that is similar to where we're working with young people who own these puzzle shops. And just, you know, our obviously with us being mentors, our focus is on just making sure that they're compliant, that they are meeting our financial targets that we've set for them. But we've been realizing that sometimes there is something else that needs to be done. And what she said, like her approach in terms of taking time and going through, the issues one by one, or going through the daily takings actually one by one, each day is very useful. And just that whole thing, I never thought of it, that actually they could be, because we've put these beautiful systems, there's point of sale systems that can pretty much do everything, but still having challenges with them recording their everyday takings, and things like being fearful of SARS and being fearful to record everything because they're either not going to miss the target or they're going to overshoot the target. It's something that I did not think of, but I'm very grateful for that, just for those, for sharing those ideas, Emma. I think I'm going to speak to our mentors to start implementing them. So yes, on our side, we do work with a host of mentors, and you learn different things every day. And just the one case that I would like to share is unfortunately we didn't have a happy ending with this particular one, and there were many reasons for that, but. We were working for a mining company. We had been approached by a mining company to start looking at, to start a program in the area where they had just gotten a license to operate. And one of the businesses that they wanted to establish or to support was an auto service center, because they could, start them as an enterprise development beneficiary with the view of using the services, taking their cars into, for service and maintenance, using that auto center to handle their fleet. So we scoped the area, and we found a few entrepreneurs, but we settled on this particular one. And we went with, we went with we went with our hearts, as opposed to being very objective, using a proper entrepreneurial assessment, because the story was just too beautiful, and the resilience of this entrepreneur, someone who had started selling tires on this, secondhand tires on the side of the road, and had moved into a small workshop and had started to expand his businesses, his services. So still selling tires, but also doing some aluminum welding work and general car repairs. So we felt that there was a potential to work with this particular entrepreneur. And the idea or the mind wanted to actually franchise this business, so help him to convert into a very well-known franchise. And yes, so everything was in place, and so we did assign a mentor to develop a business plan, and we were very happy with the business plan, and the mine did fund the investment. So they funded the capital cost of the franchise fee, of going through the technical training, of equipment, and pretty much everything. It was just set up like that, and it was ready to go. But then we started the mentorship, and we put all the systems in place. I mean, state of the art, because of the franchisee requirement system. And then we started the mentorship. And one of the things that we realized early on was, that our selection criteria that we had used came back to bite us, because we had backed, it was clear from, the very first few months that we had backed the wrong jockey, that the entrepreneur was, one, not ready, I suppose, did not have the right business management skill, and couldn't see himself handling such a big business, and couldn't, let's say, couldn't catch up with what was required of him as a business owner, despite all the training. So we did put him on a business management training. So and he attended the technical training from the franchisee's point of view, but he couldn't keep up with the requirements of this business. So that was one thing. Personality as well. the frustration when the targets were not met, the frustration of managing staff, the frustration of managing his expenses, because when it's that you're that when you are mentoring and it's that stage, it's still early on, you pretty much want to see everything. You pretty much want to be able to sit with the business owner and go through their financials and just, pretty much advise what can be done or what cannot be done, what they need to be doing less, the expenses and what they need to be reducing on, etc. So it just became a very, very hostile environment in a way that he just didn't want to be coached at that point. He didn't want to be mentored. He just felt that he didn't need us, to be quite honest. And so it became a very difficult situation for our mentors to continue to engage with them. And we did have sessions with the mine, with the sponsor. And to be quite honest, everybody had just thrown in the table. Even though the service, the quality of the work itself, in terms of what the mechanics were able to produce, was good good enough, but the customer service, I suppose, from the manager himself, and did not really it didn't really work, and as a result, he started having a high turnover.
If I can ask you a question relating to that. So you say, what I get here clearly, what you say is the selection of the mentee, the client, is a very important part of the success story. Is it not equally important in terms of the selection of the mentor and the matching of those two?
Those two, yes. So I was going to come back to that. So yes, definitely. And that was another thing that we realized, and I was laughing when Emma was talking about you focus so much on the financials, on what the targets are, on how this SME needs to achieve. And we don't look at the human part that are happening outside of the business. Or even how do when you're dealing with someone who has this kind of personality, matching the personalities, we didn't look at that. We looked at this. We looked really at our strongest mentor who could help this business, who understands the financials, who understands all the system. But in terms of personality, of matching the personality, we had overlooked that, and that did. It really made this case to be unsuccessful. But going back, I think for us, the selection of the actual mentee became such a critical thing now, especially where we have the luxury of selecting the businesses that are coming onto the program. Sometimes we don't have that luxury. The businesses come selected by the clients. You just have to make it work. But where we have the choice to select just how we need to improve. I don't know. I'll also be interested to understand from others, how do you assess? How do you quickly assess whether you are going to be backing the right jockey, and how do you then do that personality matching between your mentor and your mentee? So essentially, so that was one of the cases that I wanted to present today.
Great stuff. So we can learn from the mistakes, perhaps even more than from the successes, because those we celebrate, and we think a bit more about where things went wrong. But this matching thing, I think, is perhaps one of the most important. Sort of that the right mentor for one mentee is not the right mentor for another, and that's perhaps not the most easy task at hand. So may I ask? And thanks for sharing that, Nosizwe. I think if I look at the chat, there's some comments and tips being given about how to overcome some of these challenges. So if you have ideas about the matching and how to decide if you're an individual mentor, whether a client is for you to work with, or whether you should rather not work with a client, in what way can you know that? Sort of. So please share your ideas there. I'm also going to ask that I'm going to open another poll, in fact, on asking what you reckon the biggest challenges are. Now you can select here two or three of these challenges: matching of the right mentors with the needs of the mentee. So we spoke about that a bit. Expectations, technical expertise, whether mentorship is giving back or whether it's a profession. The willingness of technical experts is not always used adequately. Small business clients are unrealistic. Mentees can afford good mentors, cannot afford good mentors, and new mentors enter the market without the needed competencies. What are the 2 or 3 most important challenges that we are facing in the mentorship? I'm going to keep this poll running, so if you want to keep voting on that and decide which are the most important challenges that we are facing in the industry. And we've identified a few here now from the perspective of program managers and mentors. I would ask also, I don't want to give you too many tasks at once, but sort of if you finished voting there, to think of a key question for the industry. Now we'll be talking we'll be addressing some of these questions in the webinar here today, but also there may be some that we can't address here today. But what are the key questions in the mentorship industry that will move us forward to having better impact? And if you can use the Q&A section to post your questions there. By the way, these questions will also be used in allocating who will be able to win the free access to the 2 months of Mentor Peer Circle that we spoke about earlier on, the prize. So open the Q&A window and put what you think the key questions are in the industry, the mentorship industry, for us to address, so that mentors can have better impact with their clients. Okay, so you can keep voting still too on the biggest challenges, and then I would like to ask you, what is the main question that you would like to post in terms of what we face as an industry in the Q&A box? And some of those we will be discussing here today in the webinar, and others may have to stand over for future discussion. But note that we will also use those questions in terms of deciding. The judges will decide who will be winning the prize at the end of the webinar. Cool. So as we move on to Ian, I know Ian has got a presentation, so I'm not sure, Ian, if you want to switch on your camera and unmute yourself, then we can see your face too.
Morning, everybody.
Thanks for joining us. So would you like to have the slides open from the start?
No, I'll tell Carl when to start those up in a couple of minutes. I just wanted to give an introduction.
Okay, cool. Just say when.
Yeah, all right. So I'd just like to spend a couple of minutes talking about my own experience and then move on to my slides. So I'm going to start by giving you some of my background in mentoring, where I am today with this whole program I'm on, and then look at some of the lessons that I learned from my experience before moving then into some of the challenges and models that we are now using in different forums. So yeah, I started sort of by default, and largely because I'd invested in a number of startup companies and ended up playing the role of a mentor, more or less by default. So I'd been doing it for many years before I realized that, in fact, I was the backseat driver in these businesses. We started over 20 businesses during the 20 years that I was involved before moving into entrepreneurship properly. So in my corporate life, if you like, of these 20 businesses, 15 failed. And we lost a fair amount of money there. But 5 did really well, and of 5 of those, 3 I'm still mentoring the CEOs in those companies. Just to look at the numbers there, we invested roughly $500,000 in those various startups. And today the net worth of the 3 companies is around $10 million. So the lesson there straight away is that you will fail, but you need to continue. It's the few successes that more than compensate the failures in entrepreneurship. We created something like 300 jobs. And then about 2 years ago, I decided that's it. I've had enough of corporate. I resigned all my positions as a director in different companies. And I decided to write a book. Here it is. 101 of Entrepreneurship in Africa, in which I captured a lot of the experiences I'd made. And a lot of it, as I think mentioned by the previous panelists, is to do with psychology. In fact, when I start a mentorship program now, I do start with psychometric testing. I use Professor Angela Duckworth's test on grit, for example. So a lot of the things that I now practice have come out of my own experience. Around a year ago, I approached UJ and asked if I could be involved in some of their programs. They finally accepted. And today I'm redesigning the mentorship program at the University of Soweto campus. It's the Center for Entrepreneurship. Now, this center has been going for more than 10 years. They've trained up more than 1,000 entrepreneurs in 6-month programs. They're quite well funded, roughly 35,000 Rand per attendee. And yet the success ratios haven't really been that important. We did a review a couple of months ago, and one of the reasons we felt was that the mentorship hadn't been done correctly, if at all. We were tending to train people up with mentorship skills and then leaving them to find their own way in the world. So 6 months ago, we started a first cohort with a proper mentor program. And of 45 attendees in that cohort, only 4 actually responded well to mentorship. And 2 are still in the process of mentorship. The costs of those 4, if you take it over the whole program, the 4 that really took benefit from it, was about 200,000 Rand each. So that's my second point. It's expensive to do this properly and have the impact that you need. So the lessons that I've drawn briefly before I move on to the slides is, number 1, mentoring is a long-term process. In one case, I've been mentoring a business owner for more than 15 years. It's not something you can hit and miss. I believe it's more of a father-son type of, or mother-daughter type of relationship. With good mentoring, there's no doubt that there's a relationship to success. Clearly, there's a direct relationship between how well you mentor and how you succeed. I think what I would like to suggest is that an initial audit of the skills gaps between what the entrepreneur is trying to achieve and where he is at the moment to be done. And those gaps then filled with more of coaching type activities than mentoring as such. The mentor may find what those gaps are and then direct the candidate into more coaching type of activities where there's a specific objective, a specific budget, and a specific outcome. I think what I've also seen is that if we can find the future Richards or Herman Mashabas or Raymond Ackermans and pump as many resources into them that we can, we are more likely to have a very big impact. Because if even one of those future leaders will bring thousands of others along with them. So if the mentor thinks about, is this the future Richard Branson or Richard Maponya, and puts every effort into that individual, I think we'll then get really good results that we've not really been getting in terms of the money we've been. If I look at some of the numbers, roughly from the work we've done, the research we've done, from 1,000 applicants into the program, we get about 120 joining in, 20 drop out for different reasons, leaving about 100 to complete a program. Of those 100, 70 have bad ideas or are not actually entrepreneurs, leaving us with a group of around 30. Of those 30, 20 fail. And we move on to basically have 10 in which we can really work with. So you're already reducing rapidly in a funnel effect where the focus should be. Of the 20 remaining, 7 stagnate. Not a bad thing because they still at least employ the entrepreneur and maybe a family member or something like that. And 3 then on become successful. Of those 3, what we're looking for is the 1-star jackpot that can lead the whole industry forward. So if I look at my first slide here and move on to the challenges. Let me just close that. Those numbers suggest that of 1,000 potential entrepreneurs, 970 are not going to make it. We need to spend time really identifying those 30 upfront before spending a lot of money on developing them. Many don't have what we call grit. What I've seen is the people who've succeeded over a long time, got through the 4-year stress test of entrepreneurs, have a vision, a passion, something they're really working towards, and they have the perseverance to succeed. That can actually be tested, and you can test it fairly early on in the process. The second point is that there seems to be some confusion between mentoring and coaching. I've looked at the Abasa definition. It's not that clear to me either. I think this is something we need to really focus on and employ coaches who are professional in doing certain things, like getting the entrepreneur to win a tender or completing their first tax audit or whatever. So I use a number of models. This slide here shows one, which is to identify the opportunity, to refine it and work on it. You're all free to use these models. So you can find the full write-up on my LinkedIn profile. But what I do basically very quickly is look at what is the context in terms of the economy, the community, and the entrepreneur. If we can find the overlap between those three worlds, we're more likely to find an opportunity that will be sustainable. If I could do the next slide. The other point here is that mentorship sort of covers the entire process of entrepreneurship. From the first step of education around the opportunity, learnerships, skills acquisition, and moving on to incubation, funding, and then to the next level. The mentor has to oversee that entire process. I came across an entrepreneur the other day. He had just lost 3 million rand, which he had made 2 years before. And the reason was he thought he could achieve the same result with a new project, whereas he had not actually learned the technical skills required. So the process of entrepreneurship training I take in 3 phases. Is this person really an entrepreneur? Do they understand the context in terms of the opportunity? And then fill in the gaps on entrepreneurship skills. Following this 3-stage approach, we get into the entrepreneurial cycle that I mentioned earlier. If I could have the next slide. I think this is the last one. These are the numbers in terms of funneling. And these are the models that we are starting to use, whereby we begin to focus earlier in terms of who really is going to be worthy, possibly successful, in terms of finding the next Herman Mashaba or Richard Maponya, those people who will lead us towards a true economic transformation. And that's me. Thank you very much.
Great. So, I mean, that last slide shows us again that selection is key and that attrition is built into the system. So sometimes failure is part of the way that we do things, especially in business. But thank you very much, Ian, for that comprehensive overview. The first comment that you made was that mentoring is not just a short, quick solution, but it's a long-term process, which is a really profound observation and has lots of implications for the way that many programs, mentorship programs, are structured. So there's something for us to chew on. But the main thing I take from what you say is that there's a whole ecosystem of support needed for entrepreneurs, for success in entrepreneurship. And mentorship is one of them. Mentoring is one of them. And we need to understand how that fits together with others, including things like coaching and other ways of support. So there's a topic for discussion. What's the difference? And I see it's been noted in fact, Laura posted the question there on the Q&A. What is the difference between coaching and mentoring? You know, so maybe that is something that we can delve in just now. But just to remind you, please put a question that you think, even if it's not something we're going to discuss today. So KK, I haven't seen you for a long time. Thanks for your question there. Others, please also add questions on the Q&A for us to discuss or take note of. It could be questions that also leads to future webinar topics, by the way. So use that Q&A, open the Q&A and put a question that you think the main questions are that we need to challenge or challenged by in the industry. By the way, we've voted on this, and I'll share the result quickly on what we think from those that we have identified are the main challenges that we face in mentoring. And the one that comes up top, about half of people on the webinar today say that the expectation that all mentoring should be that it should be the expectation that all mentoring should be offered. Now I can't read the full sentence there, so I can't remember exactly what that option was. Should be offered for free, I think is the full sentence. So that's a main challenge that we are facing in the industry, that mentees expect to get free service. This is followed by about 45% the matching of the right mentors with the mentees. So that relationship and something that we've identified here today already too. So thank you very much for participating in that. Gives us an idea of what we see as the main challenges in the industry as we are experiencing it nowadays. So that opens some time for us to look at questions, and if I can ask that Nosizwe and Emma switch on your cameras as well, that we have a few minutes left to tackle some questions. And remember that there's a prize to be won. We'll show it right at the end. Carl, maybe you can prepare that slide for us so long. But let's tackle, I'm not sure, maybe we can just go around and ask, if we can start with you, Emma, if there's a question that caught your eye that you would like us to address. The same for Nosizwe and Ian from the questions that have been posted. Then we can move from there. So Emma, I've unmuted you so you can speak. Now we've done it simultaneously. That didn't work. Is there a question that caught your eye?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you well now. Yeah, thanks.
So something that caught my eye from a few people was the question around the difference between coaching and mentoring, purely because I've been teaching coaching and mentoring skills for the last 10 years. So it's something that comes up a lot. And so I'm actually drafting a response to put on the chat. But the other aspect around that in as well is just how important is it? I think the importance of it, the difference between the two is often around who do we go to for what assistance. So perhaps somebody may choose to go to a coach because they specifically want assistance in terms of defining goals that they want to achieve, because that in itself is a difficult task. We all assume it's easy. It's not. So creating goals and then actually taking steps and making decisions and working towards them over a period of time, and that in itself is a skill set. Whereas somebody might go to a mentor more for gaining insight from their own experience and their own failures and successes. So there is a different slant as to why you might choose a coach or a mentor. And to me, personally, my opinion is that a really good mentor is somebody who has what is termed nowadays coaching skills. But it's basically those skills of questioning and assisting somebody to think really skillfully. So yeah, that just caught my eye just in terms of the kind of the difference between the two and maybe the purposes of the two.
Yeah. So Ian and Nosizwe, if we can ask you to, sort of your understanding of the difference in the disciplines of coaching and mentoring and how they complement or work together. In fact, what I hear Emma saying is that some of the skills that a mentor need is coaching skills. So yeah. What is your take on it? So let's start with you, Ian.
Yeah, I see a mentor more like father-son, mother-daughter. And you don't ask your son for money if you're giving them advice. Mm-hmm. So controversially, I tend to think that better mentors are ones that will do it for free, adopt this young business person and help them for many years. I think the opportunity for the profession is to get this coaching really done professionally, where the business needs a particular help with a particular skill, and help them through that particular challenge. I mean, that's the way I see it.
Yeah, that's an interesting take on it. So I know, Nosizwe, you run programs where you appoint mentors that are not fitting that description that Ian now gave.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously you try to fit into what the definition should be. Mentorship should be more long-term, and while coaching should be specific short-term. But for me, I struggled with both definitions because I come from a management consulting background, and all I know is problem solving and business advisory. So I always that's always my starting point, to say your role is to work through, specific problem-solving methods with this business to help them understand or to help them move forward. And so the terminology for me, if I may say, it's neither here nor there, but obviously fitting into the context of what we do, it's always important when you appoint who you're appointing that they need to know that they're in it for a long haul, and therefore they need to see themselves as in a certain way, or they are just there to speak to fix a specific program in a particular method. But for me, my approach in all of it is always more from a problem solving or business advisory point of view. Yeah.
No. So the cookie cutter approach is something that doesn't always bring us the results that we want.
Yeah, and I wish there was a way in which we could have a standard of training mentors in problem solving, because I don't sit with the businesses all the time, but when I do have that opportunity to go and sit with them, and as what Emma was saying, just taking a step back and approaching it from a completely different point of view, it's like having a conversation. And I think mentors don't often do that, or they are there to, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to make sure that this, we oftentimes, maybe one of the reasons we had a failure in our program was for this particular business, we don't really look at the personal aspect of things. That almost comes last. We don't put in the emotions in terms of understanding the people, and also just the way we approach things. And I wish there was some sort of a framework that guide mentors on how to approach a problem.
Yeah. So I know IBASA is doing some work on creating such frameworks for skill sets and so on. So maybe there is something happening going into the future. And of course, ideas need to be shared. So it's not only IBASA's job, it's something that I'm sure there will be scope for contributing towards that too.
Christoph?
So we are running out of time, but so keep it. Ian, is the question that you would like to bring our attention on?
Quickly on two questions. One from Dudu about this question of Dudu Mofokeng about the question of grit. I really encourage you to look up Dr. Angela Duckworth. She's done quite a lot of work on particularly military candidates going into West Point Academy. And her system has been very good at predicting success in the long term. So this kind of test, if you apply it and you believe it, allows you to thin out the group so as to focus on the ones that are more likely to succeed. Yeah. It's amazing work. It's pretty much new psychology. It's not entirely scientifically established. There's still work that she has to complete, but it's a very good tool to use as one of the things you do. Incidentally, if you get then a candidate with a very low grit, it doesn't mean that they can't learn it. I think that's the point. If you don't have it, learn it. The second point, in terms of the SA government investment into economic growth, I mean, it's quite shocking. If you look at some of the numbers that coming out from the government stats department, 2016-17, they spent 20 billion rand on trying to stimulate the economy, and they only created 100,000 jobs as a result. That means that every job created cost 2 million. Now, what if you gave me 2 million to find an entrepreneur and create the next Herman Mashaba? That's the kind of thinking.
Yeah. Okay, so start thinking out of the box and look for tools. I think that's what you're saying, is look for the right tools to help you. But you need to have more than one tool in your toolbox, perhaps, eh? I don't know a carpenter that only has a hammer. So find a combination of tools that works well. Nosizwe, before you switch off your mic, if we can come to you, what question did your eye fall on that you think we should be covering? So that would be a last kind of topic for us today, unfortunately, because the time is running out fast.
Okay, I think I like Laura's question around self-employment, and if we shouldn't be encouraging majority of candidates to rather look into that, because not everyone, not every business that that we touch can create the kind of jobs that the the government is through the NDP is hoping will be achieved by these big large companies, and I do agree. I think it's not so much talking to the mentorship as such, but just in terms of how do we move forward? How do we move forward as a country, and how do we start encouraging this thing, especially with young people, that self-employment is an opportunity, and perhaps making it easier for them to even consider that as an opportunity or as an option. Because currently you speak to a lot of young people and nobody wants to go into business. Most of them, they just want to be employed. But to me, the question would be, how do we create these opportunities that they can readily plug into, perhaps, or they can readily assess. And I suppose with that comes a different support system through perhaps like companies like us, or through the work that we do as mentors. So yeah, Laura, the issue of self-employment, the issue of micro employment is micro entrepreneurship is a very big one for us as Enterprise Room. Like I said, we are running a youth program that is looking at that and starting to, really open up those opportunities, or create at least 1 or 2 business models that young people who are looking for opportunities can plug into. But I don't think we have focused on that, and I think maybe as advisors, especially those that do deal, because also business advisors, we deal with different levels of SMEs, so I think especially those that have the capacity or have the tenacity to deal with those at the micro level, it's something that we will need to. I'll be keen to just get together and look at maybe in another seminar to look at micro opportunities and what that does mean, and what that mean for the mentorship business model for us.
So we need to, the question is, what are the right models for the different contexts that we work in, whether it's youth or micro enterprise or industrialists, or, the different contexts may dictate different approaches, I suppose.
Yes, exactly. And how do we start putting a lot of focus then on the micro ones? Because they are there, they're informal, we know them, but what do they need? Do we know what do they need? And how do we encourage that sector to grow?
Great. Yeah, perhaps that is a topic for future webinars, specifically what are the needs for micro enterprises in business advising. By the way, the IBASA has got a youth chapter. And I noted the other day that one of the messages coming from them was that youth are best suited to support youth. So there's a challenge, how to equip young people to mentor other young people. By the way, that is what we do in the peer circle space for mentors, is to create a facilitated weekly engagement of a group of mentors that are actively supporting entrepreneurs to reflect on the challenges that they have. And Carl is showing us a slide there now on the offer here for six of those that have been commenting in the Q&A. So if you have a question, an industry question, you can still post it there. What is the main challenge that the industry is facing in mentorship? And you can put that question as a question in the Q&A, and you'll stand a chance to win one of these seats in a peer circle. It's facilitated. It's weekly. It happens online, so you just come into a similar format that we are on now, with about 8 to 10 other mentors. And the agenda is the same every week, to identify some challenges and then to share experiences on how to solve those challenges. And it's just an hour in a week. So that's a really powerful. In fact, for myself, I've been part of 3 such circles. And I would say in increasing my ability to serve as a good resource for my business clients, it's been where I've learned the most. I would endorse any participation in such peer circles. So if you put that question there, you stand a chance to win one of the 6 free seats. Sorry, a lot of S's in there, and it's close to 2,000 rands worth of value that you can win. Maybe we can wrap up our topic of discussion now. I'll just ask each of the panelists, Nosizwe, Emma, and Ian, to make a closing comment on the nature of mentorship and how we learn and improve. What can we learn from the webinar today? What can we take away from the webinar today, in your view? And I see Nosizwe, you're now sitting right on the left there, so I'll go Nosizwe, Ian, and Emma. Just shortly, what do you take away from today's webinar before we move on to the IBASA topics?
Two things. One, that Emma touched on in terms of, taking a step back and going through everything one step at a time with your mentee, not expecting them, not making an assumption that because you understand it, they also understand it. So that would be one thing. The second thing is I still haven't found that, the best entrepreneur assessment tool, and I'm looking for suggestions in terms that helps us early on in the process to make sure that we select the mentee that would take the mentorship or coaching, and two, that the pairing between the mentor and the mentee is relevant and suitable.
Yeah. Great stuff. Ian.
Yeah, okay. I think the challenge is really job creation, because we've seen corporates in the last few weeks shed more than 50,000 jobs. Government is talking about shedding 30,000 jobs. We have a frustrated youth that are not finding opportunity. So I think this entrepreneurship thing is absolutely vital. And when we do find one that needs help, we all have to help. It's a communal, it's an effort from all sides to find the future leaders. Because without them, I think we're lost. So I would encourage everybody to bring out who could this be, find them and help them.
Yeah, great. And as a community, we need to speak up about the successes that we have too, so that it is recognized for the difference that we can make. So thanks for that, Ian. And Emma, your last thought on what we can take away from today's webinar.
I really appreciate the curiosity that everyone is showing in this conversation, in the chat and in the questions and in the discussion here. And I think that's what keeps supporters of entrepreneurs relevant and keeps them on their toes. I think if we continue questioning what we're doing, questioning ourselves, questioning who we're supporting, how we're supporting them, and networking and connecting together to find those the best ways to assist, and being honest with one another, these peer circles, these conversations. Yeah, so I'm actually taking so much. I mean, just reading through the chat and all the topics that have come up, it's left me with more questions that I arrived with, and that's a good thing for me.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. That's a sign of a good webinar if we've raised more questions than we started off with. But I think there are some answers too, and I really take away one of the early comments, and which I was reminded of, and that is not to make assumptions, but to listen, and to listen in such a way to understand. And that for people like myself who has got very active brains, we tend to kind of run away with our thoughts, but to be present in the conversation that I have with my clients that's really what I take away from. So to be a good mentor, I need to be present in a conversation with my client and be kind of in their shoes in a way, rather than run away with ideas that I have. But yeah, that's me. So I'm sure everyone else has got something to share in terms of what to take away. We will shift our gear, but now moving on to the IBASA news and what the plans are there. So panelists, feel free to stay on in the webinar, but we'll ask Teddy and Lynn to take us through where we are going now. Thanks again for your contributions and participation today. By the way, the webinar recording will be going on live onto not live, we're live now. The recording will be on the IBASA website, available for future view and learning for those that couldn't make it today, or those that want to re-watch certain segments of the webinar. So if I can ask Teddy and Lynn and Carl, if you want to join in too, to switch on your cameras. Teddy is looking after our accounts at IBASA in the head office, and Lynn is a director of IBASA who is specifically tasked with planning certain elements of the annual general meeting that's coming up in September. Teddy, Let's see. Sorry, we've got the same problem that we had asked earlier. We'll just ask you to switch on your video, then we'll be able to see you too. And there we've got Karel Venter too, who's involved in both EPI and IBASA, and also the producer of the webinar series. So Teddy, if we can start off with you. Hi, it's nice seeing you with the IBASA banner there at your back. What's news in IBASA, and if we have from those 20 or so people that are on the webinar today that have been IBASA members or that have not been IBASA members before, why should they be thinking of joining, and what should they do when they want to join?
Well, thank you so much, Christoph, for this wonderful opportunity. Yeah, it is a great one. Thank you so much. I've been looking at some of the comments on the panel, and I I realized that some of the comments were on young people who are immature, who are calling themselves mentors, and people without qualifications, or people without even business experience who are calling themselves mentors and just starting any consulting company. So in this regard, IBASA becomes our primary solution to mitigate these. For instance, our grading and accreditation process takes into consideration things like your work experience, your academic qualification, your business and business advisory experience, and also if you are also accredited with any other professional body other than the Institute of Business Advisors. So we take these things at a broad perspective, and I'll encourage all mentors for them to legitimize their own accreditation as business advisors. They must, of utmost importance, be registered with the Institute of Business Advisors. It will increase their accreditation and legitimacy of themselves, calling themselves as business advisors. So Christoph, those questions, people have been posting them, why people are starting companies without relevant experience in businesses, business advisor is your solution. Thank you, Christoph.
Great stuff. And there, Karel, thank you very much for putting up the slide. If you want to join, go to that web address, ibasa.epr.org, and it will take you to a form to notify Teddy and the others in the office that you're interested in either renewing your membership or becoming a member for the first time. So the IBASA membership entails also a assessment of you being how does that work, Teddy? The assessment process of the different levels of accreditation.
Yes, it's the grading and accreditation process. The grading process.
How does that work?
Oh, yes. So for you to become a member, it's a very simple process. You just go to our website, www.ibasa.org.za. You just click on the tab membership, and there's a drop-down menu, and then you just click on the attached form. The form just is simple. It's an Excel spreadsheet. You can save it on your laptop. If you have not completed it, you don't have time, you can go back to it and complete it. Attach it to your email and forward it to us to admin@ibasa.org.za. All the requirements are also stated within our Excel form, which is your CV and your academic qualifications. If you've got also qualifications that is not within the South African country, you also need to have them weighted with SAQA. So we'll also do a background verification. So make sure that all your contacts and all the people that you have placed in the form are legit, as we also need to do a background check, especially with your experience and your business advisory experience.
Okay, great. And there are 3 levels of certification, and you are certified then as a business advisor, principal business advisor, and
yes,
business advisor. Great stuff.
Yes, 100%. Yes.
Okay.
So
can we move onto the plans for the AGM, Teddy? Any other news from the office?
Oh yes, we've got exciting news. Our AGM will be happening in the Cape Town this year, and all of our people, whether you're in Limpopo, Eastern Cape, you can still join in live through our webinar. We'll be having a go-to-meeting facility. Links will be sent to all our members so that you can also be part of this wonderful AGM. We also have a board meeting scheduled on the 28th of August this month. And then we are going to have a launch there from 3 to 4. People who are in and around Gauteng can come and join. And then we have an official open for a Kurleni office right here in Johannesburg. So we've got 2 exciting events. First of all is the official launch of the Kurleni offices and the AGM that's going to be happening in Cape Town. Please join us live through our online facility. Also, if you can attend physically, that would be fantastic.
Okay, so notification will be sent, I assume, via email on the Facebook page. So people keep your eyes open for that. But speaking of the AGMs, yes, I know that you're quite 100%. Involved in the arrangement for that. And from what I've seen, it sounds really exciting that there's going to be stuff happening, and it's not just going to be a boring business meeting, but there's the other plans for other activities for members to engage with each other and learn too. So, Lynn, what's been planned for the AGM, and actually when is it? It's next month sometime?
Yes, hi, Christoph, and good afternoon, everybody. Yes, the AGM takes place on the 19th of September at a location in Cape Town. We're trying to source the best hotel with a beachfront for all you guys from out of town. And there's quite a lot of activity happening on that day. So it's inclusive of CPD training. Some of you may be aware that it's important for us as business advisors to continue our professional development. There would be an opportunity to participate in such training. The AGM will then take place. There will also be extensive networking opportunities between IBASA members. Often we find we forge good relationships in times like that, and that also increases our opportunities to increase our business. Free lunch for members, that's always a good incentive. We're going to also have a forum on quality business advising. So this thing about mentoring and training and coaching and all of those things will continue to be discussed at length at that forum. We also plan to have a cocktail event where we would launch the new business logo for IBASA, and we'll also have a celebration of IBASA's 20th year in existence. We plan to bring in some keynote speakers that would also align with a theme around quality of business in business advising sector. Yes, and there'll also be some sunset cocktails to end off, as in Cape Town. That's something that takes quite a high priority. So there'll be an opportunity to network further with some cocktails and canapes. Yes, so we ask you guys to support it. It's a nice opportunity to come down to Cape Town. We've got water here. That's not a challenge for us any longer. But we still need to kind of be, conserve the water. There's not so much going around. So we're looking forward to quite a nice AGM with all the other side events taking place. And then for those of you who have any suggestions around what we can do, who we can contact for sponsorships, if you guys yourselves want to sponsor, etc., please do call the office, Teddy or Lesego, and give that kind of input. Okay, that's all I've got for now, Christoph. Thank you.
Oh, no, great stuff. Yeah, I'm also from Cape Town, so those that aren't living here, please come and join us. It's going to be fun and a good learning experience too. Specifically looking forward to some new stuff I hear. There's a launch of logo, sort of what is that about? We'll see. And I know also the regional association will be launched. So there's kind of new moves in IBASA in terms of the structural organization and making sure that we have the capacity to serve the needs of the members. Not waiting for head office to move, but in the region. So there will be opportunity for people from the Cape region as well to note how they can get involved and be active IBASA members. So that's kind of from me. I'm not sure, Teddy and Carl, thank you very much for all your hard work. I'm not sure, Carl, if you want to have a last comment there on how we use the webinars as part of CPD and also communicating with IBASA members. and our members can be active in maybe suggesting topics for future webinars and so on too. How we use these CPD, Lynn and Teddy as well, if you want to comment, how we use these CPD events for our own benefit. And Carl, maybe you can start.
Yes, thanks, Christoph. Yeah, I think this was most probably one of the best webinars so far. So we've got to really thank the participants. Over 20 questions, lots of long discussions, also between attendees. And I mean, that's what, firstly, this is recognition for CPD hours that you can formally log for formal hours for your CPD, which is great. And as we see here, it's a great interaction platform. And the participation this morning was really, really excellent. I think just confirming again how many issues are there that we actually should be talking about if we look at the questions. And definitely, we ask you guys if there are issues that you would like us to handle on a webinar coming up in the year, please send that through to the office, admin at IBASA, or to the EPI. We will post the email address there in the chat, and yeah, and let us know. Thanks, Christoph. I think a great webinar.
Yeah, great. And thank you for those that stayed on. I assume you mostly IBASA members. Looking forward to keep engaging with you. Watch out for the next email announcement or the IBASA Facebook page on next month's webinar topic. And as I said, please let us know if there are topics that you would like us to cover in the webinars. We're keenly responsive in terms of what members need, and this platform allows us to actually be flexible and come up with experts in specific fields without too much hassle. So thank you very much for participation, everyone, except Teddy and Lynn. I forgot. Do you have a last comment to make?
My comment is really to urge the members to participate in the upcoming events on the 19th of September and use your contacts to connect us so that we can get some sponsorship and more visibility about this important event taking place in Cape Town.
Great. And Teddy, would you like to give us a send-off?
Yes, for all people who want to RSVP for the for the launch that we have of our Ekurhuleni offices, please email to lesejo@ibasa.org.za. RSVP to lesejo@ibasa.org.za. Thank you so much, Christoph, and I look forward to meet you both at those around Gauteng at the Ekurhuleni launch.
Great stuff. Thank you, Teddy, and goodbye, everyone. See you next month.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.